In this video, we're talking about crafting leading questions for cross-examination. We need to talk about the definition, the purpose behind leading questions, and then we're going to talk about some examples of leading questions. That way you can kill it with your next cross-examination. Let's get to it. Welcome to Law Venture. My name is Jarrett Stone. If this is your first time watching this channel, then I recommend that you go in the description below. I have some links to some freebies. Just click the links, type in your email address, it'll get sent directly to you. What's down there? This and that. A little hard to snap with my left hand, but check those out, they're super helpful. Okay, so let's talk about leading questions. And to do that, we need to first talk about the definition of what a leading question actually is. So let's dive into that. A leading question is a question that suggests the answer. So that definition is relatively straightforward, and we'll unpack it just a little bit more in a second. I first want to make a clear distinction of when you need to be asking leading questions during the course of your trial. Fortunately, to get that answer, all we have to do is look at FRE 611. Rule 611C states that leading questions should not be used on direct examination except as necessary to develop the witness's testimony. Ordinarily, the court should allow leading questions on 1, cross-examination, and 2, when a party calls a hostile witness, an adverse party, or a witness identified with an adverse party. Given 611, the general rule of thumb is that you're going to be asking your leading questions during cross-examination. And that shouldn't come to a surprise given the fact that this YouTube video's title involves cross-examination. At the same time, be sure to note that you should most likely be objecting to leading questions if opposing counsel during their direct examination is asking leading questions. And as a side note, if you haven't watched this video about the top 10 most common trial objections you'll be making in front of the jury, I highly recommend that you check it out. Spoiler alert, one of those is actually objection leading. Now let's briefly touch on the purpose behind allowing leading questions during cross-examination. As I've talked about in other videos, which may be sliding up, maybe not, the purpose of cross-examination as a whole is to stress test the other side's story, credibility in front of the jury. Because if you can poke holes in the story or credibility of the witness or the opposing side, then the jury's more likely to rule in your favor. They're more likely to be skeptical of the other side or that particular witness. And if you're really good at cross-examination, you can simultaneously tell your client's story while you're making that cross-examination, but that's a different video. The reason why we can ask leading questions that assume the answer on cross-examination is because that's truly the only way to really get down to the point and to really poke holes. You can't really poke holes in a case generally by asking open-ended questions like, what's the weather like today? Or how are you? Or what all happened? Those types of questions are way too broad. You will never be able to pin down a witness on a particular fact or a particular issue unless you can really narrow the question down. And the only way to narrow the question down is to ask a leading question, something that assumes the answer. But there's a little bit of a caveat, because if you want to have a proper cross-examination and if you want to have a really good leading question, then you need to know the answer to the question you're asking. You see, when the jury hears a question and they hear the answer to that question, that's the first time the jury's heard that question. That's the first time they heard that answer. It's different for the lawyers, at least the good lawyers. You see, if you want to have a really good cross-examination, then you need to ask leading questions. In order to ask really good leading questions, you need to basically have the answer assumed in the question. And we'll go over examples of really good leading questions. But in order to have a really good leading question, you need to know the answer to the particular question. In order to know that particular answer, you need to do a lot of homework before the trial ever begins, before the cross-examination ever begins. You see, a lot of lawyers end up going through interrogatories or the answers to requests for production, basically all the discovery responses. They also go through depositions, or they have depositions, they talk to other witnesses, they get basically all this dirt or information about the particular witness that's on the stand from other people. They go through documents, they basically try and find anything and everything that could potentially nuke the potential witness that's on the stand. But sometimes there isn't anything that you can find before the trial. So all you'll have at your disposal is the direct examination from the opposing side. And during that time, the opposing counsel is trying to get the witness to maybe tell the story. So be able to pay attention during direct examination. That's important because you may hear that there are gaps in the testimony. The story doesn't really add up. Or maybe the witness is just downright skirting an issue and doesn't want to touch on something that is going to hurt the other side. And you can basically get a sense of what the witness is trying to avoid. And that's the pressure point you may want to hit during your cross-examination. Again, you're gonna have to use your judgment to determine what that is, but if you don't have anything leading up and going into trial to basically nuke the other side's witness, then you can always use direct examination. All right, given that, let's start talking about some examples. We've kind of talked about the abstract of what all goes into a really good leading question for your really good cross-examination. So let's make it a little bit more concrete by talking about these examples. So here are some examples of leading questions. You're watching a YouTube video, correct? Notice I'm asking a question there that assumes the fact that you're watching a YouTube video. The answer should be yes, but let's assume you decide to maybe throw a wrench in the plan and say no. It's not gonna look good in front of the jury, but let's just go with it. Here are the follow-up questions I would ask in that particular instance. You just answered my previous question, correct? Obviously the answer is yes. And in order to answer that question, you had to have heard the question first, correct? Again, obvious, yes. And in order to hear the question, you had to have been watching the YouTube video, right? Now, notice, it really doesn't matter what you say to this question or how you answer this question, because the answer is clearly gonna be yes. But if you were to say no, in that situation, on that particular cross-examination, I probably wouldn't ask a follow-up question to make the witness look extra bad, because in that particular situation, the witness is making themselves look terrible in front of the jury and not credible whatsoever. Just a little bit of a side note. But notice that each question I was asking was assuming the answer in the leading question. For example, the one about hearing me whenever I asked the question. That's a fact, you heard me. And the other one was, so you were watching the YouTube video. That was a fact, again, that maybe circled back to the first question. All of those were facts and answers that I already knew in advance of asking the question. Now, I know it's not super impressive that I just conducted a cross-examination to myself with nobody here in front of a camera, but the principles are super important, and I would just want you to understand the principles because you can apply those to any cross-examination. Now, if you want just a really critical cross-examination question that you should be asking in all of your cases, then here it is. You subscribe to this video, correct? Sorry, I couldn't resist, but that button's down there. If you really want the most important question you need to be asking in all your cross-examinations, I recommend that you watch this video above. I also recommend that you watch all the other videos that I have about cross-examination. They're super helpful, and they do have actual cross-examination questions that you can implement into your next cross-examination. How many times did I just say the word cross-examination? Way too many times. All right. If you have any questions, be sure to leave those in the comments below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. You know what to do, and I'll see y'all in the next video.